بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. Bismillah. So thank you for joining us for Khalifa Conversations. Um, Sevim and I started Khalifa Conversations during Ramadan, and we were encouraged to continue this on a monthly basis. And may Allah grant us success. We're just trying to make it throughout December, and then we'll see what happens next. My name is Corey Majid, and I'm the founder of Green Ramadan, greenramadan.com. And co-hosting with me in this discussion is Sevim, the executive director of Green Muslims. Today, Sevim is also the focus of our conversation, and we'll get to that shortly. So as we're settling in, I just want to remind everyone is already on mute. That's perfect. Just try to stay on mute unless you have something to say, something to contribute to the conversation. And you're welcome to just come off mute and say your question during the conversation, or also please write your question or comments in the chat. You can let us know where you are joining us from. And yeah, so let's get started. The purpose of Khalifa Conversations is to have discussions about practical ways to live the environmental spirit of Islam within our community. So inshallah, you all will be able to join us, next month as well. And if you have a topic that you like to discuss, or a person who you like to have a discussion with, let us know and send us a DM or contact us via our websites, greenramadan.com or greenmuslims.org. Today, we're going to be talking about the spiritual, psychological, and physical benefits of spending time in nature. Before I introduce Sevim, I thought I'd highlight how the Quran can help us rediscover the signs of Allah in nature. And one of the things I like to do when I'm reading the Quran is I have an app on my phone, and I just bookmark the ayah that mention natural elements. That's just one of the things that I do, because it's something I really enjoy about the Quran when it mentions natural elements. And you can even see that in the names of the chapters of the Quran. There are so many of them that are named after natural elements or things in nature or animals or something like that. There's so many. You think that it's a sign from Allah telling us something, right? So one of the ayahs that I want to share today is from Surah Al-An'am, and which means cattle, another surah named after an animal, and it's ayah 59. I'm going to read the translation. And Bismillah. And with him are the keys of the unseen. None knows them except him, and he knows what is on the land and in the sea. Not a leaf falls, but that he knows it, and no grain is there within the darkness of the earth, and no moist or dry thing, but that it is written in a clear record. That's Surah An'am, ayah number 59. So one of the things that I really like about this ayah is this ayah really comes to me in the fall when we have all these falling leaves. So in part of the ayah, it says Allah knows what's in the land and the sea. So Allah's knowledge encompasses everything. So who best to put our trust in and to ask for help than the one whose knowledge encompasses everything, right? And at a time in the fall when we can see leaves blowing in the wind and leaves on the ground, like every time I see a leaf, I'm reminded that Allah knows everything. When I see a single leaf fall, I'm reminded that not only does Allah know everything, but Allah commanded that leaf to fall and all the other leaves to fall, each one, individually. SubhanAllah. So it's comforting to me a leaf, falling leaf makes me smile and say Allahu Akbar, because I know that that leaf was commanded by Allah, you know? And this simple sign helps me to remember and praise my Lord. So I think that's what nature is to me. It's nature is like signifiers pointing to their creator and and mine. And also in this ayah, it talks about there is no grain in the within the darkness of the earth, that it's written in a clear record, right? So I'm a beginning farmer. So I planted seeds, and I said Bismillah when I planted that seed, because I have no control whether that seed grows or not. I say Bismillah, I do what I need to do. I, make sure it has what it needs, the light, the soil, the water that needs. And if that seed should grow, then Alhamdulillah, I'm thankful for Allah. So I just think of a seed in the dark waiting for Allah's command. And many of us are, going through some dark times, some dark and trying times right now. And maybe we should think of ourselves as seeds waiting for Allah's command. And of course, this is no tafsir. It's just my personal reflection. This is like what goes in my mind when I see these verses in the Quran that and talk about nature. And it's just one of the things I love about the Quran. And Allah knows best. So now let me introduce my partner and friend in Khalifa Conversation, Sevim. Sevim Kalyoncu is a certified master naturalist and a naturalist instructor with a passion for helping children connect with nature. She serves as an outdoor specials teacher at Medina Montessori for both primary and elementary students, as well as a roving naturalist interpreter for the Fairfax County Park Authority. Sevim is also the executive director of Green Muslims, a Washington, D.C. based nonprofit organization working to help connect the American Muslim community with nature and climate action. Through Green Muslims, she leads the Our Deen is Green Youth Outdoor Education Program, which strives to bring Muslim youth closer to nature and their God-given responsibilities towards it. And before I even met Sevim, I sent a couple of my children to the Our Deen is Green program, and they loved it. It's something that I hope can spread, all across this country in one shape or another. So let's get into our discussion with Sevim. Like I said, I'm gonna let Sevim talk. If you have some questions or whatever, remember, we're kind of keeping this light. Just ask whenever. All right, Sevim, Bismillah.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Thank you so much, Corey. While you were speaking, I had an idea. When COVID is over, when we can meet again, I think Khalifa Conversations needs to do a nature walk, a spiritual nature walk. That should be our in-person project, inshallah, because everything that Corey talked about really touched my heart when it comes to the signs of our creator in nature and the spiritual benefit. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. As you all know, I am Sevim. This is my daughter Nuria, who's with me today. I don't have earbuds, so we're gonna see how this goes. If I get too many interruptions, it's gonna change, right? But I do want to make this a light conversation, if for no other reason than because I'm more comfortable that way. So please, everyone, feel free. I mean, if you don't mind turning on your video, you of course don't have to, and just participating as if we were meeting together, feel free to do that. I'm usually one for prepping my conversations because I don't like formal speaking too much, but the topic that we're addressing today in our Khalifa Conversations is one that definitely touches my heart. And so I was willing to talk about this, especially over the last, 9 months. Most of my work has been focused on outdoor classes for children. In fact, I haven't been doing quite as much with Green Muslims specifically, because there's been a real call, especially this school year, for more outdoor classes, as indoor classes are not taking place. And so that's really what I've seen as a silver lining to the whole experience that we're having right now because of COVID-19. Unfortunately, not all people, not all children are experiencing this benefit, but I have watched a lot of education change out of and move out of the classroom, either to more homeschooling type options with more flexibility, or some schools, especially the private schools that can afford to do this, are actually taking their classes outdoors. And I really do wish all children could experience this. But I am happy for the ones who are getting this experience. Very briefly, in case someone hasn't already heard this story, because I do give this little background bit every time I start speaking, even on behalf of Green Muslims. My passion for nature and for helping people connect with nature, especially children, and helping them develop a love for nature, for the earth, for the environment, comes from a very, very personal experience that I had in my own childhood. I like to tell the story about how I was raised Muslim in Alabama. Not that there was anything against that. You know, people's hearts are very warm, and I think it definitely deepened my faith in so many ways. But I actually didn't grow up attending a mosque or going to Sunday school. There was no such thing in the town that I grew up in, and so my faith was very, very personal. It was, of course, family based, but it was very much based in my own heart as well. And I think it was the blessing of having grown up in a house in the woods by a lake that strengthened my faith, and alhamdulillah is the reason that I call myself Muslim today. I not only did not go to a mosque, but I was an only child, so I wasn't always playing with my siblings inside. I would go outdoors and I would just go exploring in the woods around my home, and I saw the most amazing things. And everything I saw, I put together with the Creator. I mean, where else could it have come from? There weren't signs that humans had done that. So where did it come from? And that's how I developed not only my faith in God, but also my love of God, from the beauty that I saw in God's creation. And so many, many years later, when I became a mother, I'm bringing my child up in a much more diverse area. She, has a Sunday school and a mosque to go to, but I really, really wanted to share my my deep personal spiritual understanding of my faith and of my relationship with my Creator, with her. And so I immediately started thinking about ways that we could spend time in nature together, and she could develop that love of the beauty that surrounds us and see it all as signs of the one who created it. In addition to that, I started panicking about the environment, because here I was bringing a life into this world and there's so much pollution, and I don't know if what we're eating is safe. So at the same time, I was worried about climate change and pollution, and I was also worried about having my child have the same experiences that I had had, because I really saw it as a fundamental aspect of my faith and developing my faith. So that's how I began exploring all these new lines of work, because I do not have an academic or professional background related to this whatsoever, just that personal experience from my childhood, which of course I took for granted. Now I ask myself why I didn't pursue studies in something related, but I completely took it for granted at the time. But over the last few years, I've definitely started through my exploration of ways of not only getting my daughter involved, but also other children as well. I've found that there's plenty to do out there in terms of helping people, and especially children, connect with the environment and have the outdoor education experience. So we know that being outdoors in nature is healthy on every level. We know that we need it physically. We need the exercise. Let's focusing just on children right now, but it really applies to everyone. They need to be free to move around and not stuck in a classroom. They need to be breathing fresh air. They need to be seeing the beauty of nature. We know that it has psychological benefits for these reasons as well. just being in a place that's calm and not chaotic, that's beautiful and not ugly. So very important that everybody has these experiences. But one thing that's not discussed as much is the spiritual benefit, which is, I would say the most important reason. But as I described, for me, seeing nature is a very clear reminder, clear proof of what my faith is based on, God's existence and greatness and beauty. And so I think at all levels, okay, Nuri, I'm starting to get a little bit distracted. Can you sit still, please? Please.
Okay.
Thank you. So I really wanted, no, Nuri, no, darling, no, darling. Sorry, everybody. So I really, I wanted my own child to have these experiences. And the more I got involved, the more I saw that all children really needed it. So step by step, I kind of worked my way into this line of work. I mean, it started, I guess the biggest step was getting involved with Green Muslims, and Green Muslims doesn't exist solely for our Deen is Green. That's just one aspect of the organization. But as I got involved with all the different topics that fall under climate action, I found that my heart was really in youth education and nature education and outdoor education. And so I have definitely pursued other avenues outside of Green Muslims as well, particularly in Montessori style learning and other alternative paths of learning. There already is an understood value of spending time in nature, of getting to know nature, of being involved. So that worked out really well when there was an opportunity to teach an outdoors class. And mind you, I was still a newbie. I had become a master naturalist by that point, which is actually, I was thinking of all the things that I could kind of root for, advertise during this talk. The organizations that I've been involved with and the paths that I've taken to learn. But becoming a master naturalist was a great turning point, because again, I didn't have the academic background, but I had the passion. And this is a doable first step that for me led to a career change. For many people who become master naturalists or master gardeners, they learn about nature or about plants, and then they find ways to volunteer and share that knowledge, but which all master naturalists and gardeners are required to do. So you have your volunteer hours as well. But that volunteer work led to a career in addition, which was a really nice benefit. So it was I still look forward to learning more, but it was a good first step in terms of getting some general knowledge. So if any adults want to learn more and get more involved, I highly recommend looking into the master naturalist programs in your counties or cities or areas. With that basic background, I then knew more than most kindergartners and first graders. So I had something to share with them. And that's where I started. And it's really wonderful because one of the first things we learn as a master naturalist is you have to say you don't know when you don't know. You can't make things up, but there's always something more that you can share with your students or participants that makes it worth their trouble to listen to you. So it's been really good. The challenge is making it fun as well. And especially with young children, you wonder, is this having any impact whatsoever? Looking back on the last couple of years, I remember being introduced to a new class, and maybe some kids freak out when they see a bug. Maybe other kids kill the bug as soon as they see the bug. You see my daughter's reaction because she was definitely brought up to not do that. But then, a couple months later, when I see how their behavior has changed, how that fear is gone, and how they actually seem interested, how they bring me a new leaf or a new stick or tell me about the bird that they saw, it's really amazing what an impact just a little bit of information, a little bit of excitement can give to them. So there are definitely programs out there if you ever want to get your own children involved. They don't have to be enrolled in a private school. There are programs for homeschoolers, because I also lead hikes for the Compass program in Northern Virginia. And Green Muslims will always try to keep the Our Deen is Green program going, at least on a biannual basis. But you can even go outside with your own family and maybe take a guidebook, maybe get an app on your phone, because there are a lot of them. Seek is a really good one for first timers, especially if you want to learn what the names of things are or learn something about what you see. And then it becomes such a deep learning experience that anybody can really have on their own. But there are also opportunities for programs and classes as well. But I wanted to talk a little bit more about the benefits and why I see this as so important. If anybody wants to chime in or ask any questions, feel free to do so at any point. I know my daughter really wants to share her own experience, and maybe we'll have time for that at the end. I mean, it's interesting for her because this is so commonplace. It's not, the most exciting thing about going on a hike with other kids is seeing the other kids. But then she'll start, telling other people about invasive plants and animals and whatever. So I know it is seeping in. Although I'll admit that Wild Kratts in the cartoon is very helpful for that as well. And it's funny, a lot of my students watch it and they love to share the information. So I'm totally in love with that show right now. My distaste for TV has lightened as I see the educational benefit. Can I finish?
Can I say something quickly?
Okay, one thing very quickly.
Did you know that fire lizards aren't actually okay with fire? They walk out of it because it bothers them.
Yes, so fire lizards don't actually come out of the fire. Well, I wonder, did you learn what kind of lizard it really is?
They're called fire lizards.
That's their name, but it's not here, right? See, we don't have, I tend, especially because of my master naturalist.
It's in the Black Forest.
Thank you. Because of my master naturalist background, I focus on what's local here in Northern Virginia, but your knowledge can always go beyond that. And the kids definitely love to tell me about the animals all over the world. So,
Mama.
Can I speak now, please? Thank you.
Please,
if anybody has any questions or thoughts, again, feel free to just mention them. But when I'm out, so I do work with non-Muslim focused groups, and the best thing to do is just go out on a nature hike. When you can do that, there is no boredom whatsoever. The kids are always full of questions and curiosity, and it's so easy to just kill hours just out in the woods. But I do like to bring, whenever possible, some degree of spirituality, and when possible, Our Deen into the whole discussion. As Corey was saying, just watching, just observing what is out in nature provides us with endless signs of God's greatness. And one of the activities that I like to do is to discuss the 99 names and look for signs of those names in nature. And kids are usually very into that. I mean, there are so many Quranic verses that can be mentioned as well. And it's a wonderful opportunity to discuss the meaning from what is oftentimes a unique perspective. I mean, I don't know about the rest of you, but when I was learning in a more formal context about my deen, nature seldom was brought into the picture. And that's why, we chose the name for this group as Khalifa Conversations. When I first learned the word Khalifa, steward, as in steward of the earth, never came into play. But now I realize it's such a perfect way of interpreting it, because it's not that we are in control and can make all the decisions and do whatever we want, it's that we're responsible.
Excuse me, Sevim. We're getting a little bit of interference from the earplugs. You want to unplug them?
I don't have them actually. I'm not using them. Did I put them back in?
No. It's like something is moving around. There's some like background noise. I
maybe
get thought it was
somebody
from the.
fidgeted. Can you sit still?
I'll try to connect.
Yeah, there's some background noise.
Okay.
Like, yeah, whatever that was.
That was a
It's gone
piece of
now.
paper because there was
Okay.
fidgeting going on.
Okay. Okay.
Fine
Okay.
Now.
Can I
Nuria,
All right,
if
thank
you
you.
can say something really quickly, go ahead and do that.
Did you know?
Look at everybody.
Did you know pandas' thumbs are actually wristbands?
It's not their thumbs. It's the heel of their paw.
But they actually have 6, including the wrist bone, which is like the thumb.
So they have all 5 toes and then the wrist bone, right?
Yeah, they have all 5 fingers and then the wrist bone that's like a thumb.
So on that note, it's always, when trying to make a more formal class, it's always good to pull games and art and other activities into your exploration of nature, and let the kids share whatever facts they may know or observations that they may have. What else? With younger children, it helps with sensory skills. I mean, we may focus a whole class just on things we hear, and it's not just sounds. It's also the source of the sounds. You hear the wind blowing through the trees, you can talk about the wind, you can talk about the trees, you hear the birds singing, or the animals running around.
Or the water splashing.
Yeah, you might hear water splashing too. There are touched feeling-based classes as well. You can blindfold the kids and have them touch the bark of the tree or a leaf or even the dirt so that they pay more attention. And it does seem that the more time that they spend in nature, the more of a love they develop, which is really the ultimate goal, to appreciate, not only to protect the environment, but to respect its creator. I mean, the love and respect that grows from developing love and respect for the creation, the love and respect for the creator that grows from that is really, really amazing. So it is a deeply spiritual experience that fits so well into Islam especially. And teaching them to be kind and gentle and understand that their size compared to that of an ant is so great that they must control their own strength. And to learn, I mean, young children don't realize that when they squish an ant, they're taking away a life. And that was mind-boggling to me at first. I've lightened up a bit. I understand the examples that we set as adults don't always clarify such things. I remember once watching an adult in a playground automatically stomp on a bee that he saw because he didn't want any kids getting stung. And so when kids observe that, then they think that that life really doesn't matter. But not only can they learn that it matters, but also that if they have a good relationship with something that even scares them, like a bee or a snake or a spider, they really have nothing to fear if they learn the proper way to behave around it. And so the experience also takes away the fears. A lot of parents have come to me saying, oh my gosh, you know, your class is so great. My children are no longer scared of going outside. And it's true, just changing the whole perspective. I mean, some parents do admit that, you know, I've got this fear of the woods. I don't want to go out there, but I don't want my children to be like that. Well, yeah, give them the chance to explore with someone who's more comfortable, and then who knows, maybe their love of nature will eventually rub off on you as well, because so much of the fear comes from ignorance, just lack of experience. And so little by little, if you get more experience, then the fear goes away and it's replaced by love. Love of nature means protection of nature. Protection of nature means our own well-being. If we take care of the earth will take care of us. But if we don't care about it, we'll continue to damage it, and that'll all come back to us. So whether you're, I mean, I've worked with so many people with so many different perspectives on the earth, where the ultimate goal is to help the earth, but some do it for the sake of conservation. They want the plants and the animals to survive the way they were intended to. Some people do it for recreation. They want to be able to go out and have fun kayaking or hiking. Some people do it. One of the classes that I'm actually leading right now is a outdoor survival class. So they like the adventure, the excitement, or maybe they even want to learn the ways of the Native Americans. they still have to have a positive relationship with nature to be able to do that. And then there are the climate activists who are talking more about air quality than how the native plants and animals that are around us. But in the end, they're still trying to protect the earth so that we humans can be healthy too. And all of these perspectives matter. You may find the one that fits best with you, as I've found that the education about nature is what I love the most, but you still work together with everyone to protect the earth. So our attitudes are everything. And if young children can grow up loving the earth, I think they will automatically care for it, no matter what previous generations had done. And as I said, it's beneficial physically to be outside, it's beneficial mentally to be outside. And then if we can pull the spiritual aspect in as well, it not only helps us at an individual level to deepen our own spirituality and our own relationship with our creator, but wow, if conservation of the earth, caring for the earth, learning from the earth could be a core part of our deen, that would be amazing. I mean, Muslims would be caring for the environment so much more than they are these days. So I think the long-term benefits are vast, and there's just so much to gain from these little experiences.
I know as a youth, I grew up, I didn't grow up in Alabama. I think I spent the first 7 years of my life in Alabama. That's a pretty formative time, right? And I didn't go to summer camps as a child. I went to grandma's house in Alabama. So wherever I would live in the world, I would go to grandma's house for the summer, and that was my summer vacation. So that is where she lived in rural Alabama, and she farmed, and that was where my personal love for the planet began. So I remember I was with a friend one time, and we were coming from down the road, and we got out the car, and then just nonchalantly I said to her, don't step on that. That is a red ant pile. If you step on it, you're gonna get bitten. So just be careful. And I just continued on like it was no big thing. Whereas the other child who was with me was a city child, and she was like, what? Red ants? And she was already scared to even like get out the car. But that appreciation and environmental literacy, shaped how I moved in the world. And that started, as a child. And here I am today trying to be a farmer and removing wasps from my house carefully to get them out instead of, hitting them with a shoe or, whatever, just killing them right out. So yeah, I think it really does make a difference how to teach children how to interact with responsibility with their world. And one of the things that you said that really resonated with me is, when it comes to, ants and my children, that they'll see an ant, and sometimes I'll be like, an ant's in the house. I'm like, you are a million times bigger than the ant. The ant is probably freaking out because of you. Chill out. It's an ant. Okay, I'm gonna let you go ahead on, please.
Oh my gosh. So that whole red ant thing, that brought back some memories from some of my classes, because it's true. I could go on as to why we have fire ants in the United States whatsoever, because they are not a native creature, but we had a lot of those ant mounds in Alabama, I remember. We do not have them, at least not as many. Maybe they're getting up this way, but in here in Northern Virginia. And I keep seeing kids freak out when they see an ant, and they always think it's a fire ant that's going to bite them. But if you know what it is, and you know that it's harmless, the fear, and it takes time. It's not like as soon as you know, all those fears are going to disappear. But if you start with young children, learning early on how to interact with other creatures on this earth, because we are just one creature amongst so many, it will have it will influence their entire lives. I mean, we had fire ants, we had water moccasins on the lake that I live near, we had rattlesnakes. It's a poisonous snake that we don't have in Virginia. And so we had black widow spiders and even scorpions, and they got into the house when you lived in the woods. Now, when I was a kid, was I afraid of them? Yes. Now, I'm not going to mess with it, but I'm not afraid of it anymore. I know, again, I'm much bigger than it is. If I am careful and I am making it,
to teach me on the scorpions.
You don't have to worry about scorpions. We don't have them here either, but we'll talk about them some other time. But that knowledge frees you from so much fear, and it gets replaced by a love of the greatness, of the beauty. I mean, think of something as frightening as a scorpion. Subhanallah, subhanallah. Allah created this amazing thing, and every part of it has a purpose and a reason. And if we could look at everything we see in that way, we would not only protect it, but as I mentioned before, we would respect its creator so much more as well. So to be able to go around the world and no, not right now, please.
Did you know a scorpion can win against a tarantula?
Okay, so
I read it in a
scorpions,
book.
Scorpions and tarantulas.
And they have a venomous sting, even more than the tarantula.
Do you know that if you leave it alone, though, it's not going to hurt you? To learn that these creatures have these things that we're afraid of as a defense mechanism. And if we learn to respect them and their homes and their areas, then we don't need to fear those things. That's a big thing as well. It is interesting to explore why we have the fears of nature that we do. And they're common, people shouldn't be ashamed for feeling that way, but willing to try to get beyond those fears, because it is what you experience, what you learn, that forms how you feel about being around such things.
I was wondering if you could address, so the weather is changing. Fall is my favorite season. The weather is, usually perfect, but as we get on in the year, I was wondering if you could address how we can, get outdoors as a family, or, individually when the weather is, not so great, whether it be just, cold or rain or whatever, or snow, whatever.
Excellent question. And I'm glad you're asking me that now instead of a year ago, because I am definitely having to learn how to do that. With the survival class that I'm teaching right now, it is a year-long program. And part of the excitement is learning to deal with winter outdoors. It really, in the simple sense of us just being able to go out for a hike in the winter, it's really all about how you dress. And key is layers. Even if it's raining, you can wear waterproof layers and you can get out there. And then the challenge is to learn to appreciate different forms of weather. If I can talk about the survival class a little bit, when it rains, we put up a tarp and we start a fire, and it is the most fun class you can imagine. Even more fun than trying to do other things out in the woods on a nice, warm, sunny day. So you do learn to appreciate different weather conditions. We have had a really long, really nice fall. And so, the last few months have been perfect for having outdoor classes, but watching for the decent weather in the winter is key too. I mean, I totally understand. I think my limit comes on the winter days when the wind is blowing and it just gets straight down to my bones. And then I really, really don't want to be outside, but I'm working on that too. Again, it's about layers. It's about having the right kind of windbreaker or raincoat. Don't be afraid to get dressed up to go out on a hike, and find places that you love too. If you're totally new to it, check out local parks and trails. If there's a creek or a river, water always makes it more exciting. But getting through a beautiful forest. Winter is not bad because you're not going to see as much green, of course, but you can see other things that you wouldn't see in the middle of summer. So I'm taking kids out once a week just for a 1-hour nature hike. And at first I was kind of worried about what we would do when the weather started to get cooler and the leaves fell off the trees because I was having fun IDing trees and plants, and I'm not quite good enough to do it without the leaves. But then I realized, wow, when everything starts dying back, you can go exploring deeper in the woods. You can see more birds and other animals, birds especially. When the leaves are off the trees, that's a great time to start watching birds. And you don't have to be an expert at any of these things. Just start watching and get an app to ID if you want to ID things, maybe get a guidebook. And it really grows on you. You may not even like the idea too much at first, but when you start to remember what you've seen and say, oh, I know that's that, and that it's only here for the winter, and maybe it's just me, but I love it. I love being able to.
And that chickadees are stronger than blue jays.
Really?
Yeah, they're stronger than blue jays.
She learned so much from wildcrats that I still don't know. But speaking of chickadees, little things with young kids like chickadees, being able to teach a cool way to learn about something. Now, when I go to my preschool class, they all greet me with chickadee dee 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 every morning, because I taught them that the chickadee is named after its call, which is chickadee dee 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 dee, or at least one of its calls. Little facts, fun facts like this really make for a more exciting, not only class with kids, but also a hike. So use your senses. Teach young kids to use all their senses, not just look, but listen and even touch. But key for winter is keeping the wind off and layering, and be brave. Because the other thing is that I've found, I mean, when I'm teaching a class in the city and the wind is blowing, it's miserable. But then if we're out in the woods, it's not so bad. It actually is, the wind is gentler when you're in the woods, and it, give it a try. And you'll find that it's not as bad as you might have thought, but have layers. If you're too warm, you can always take one off.
I think the point you made about using your senses, like focusing on one individually at a time, I think that's something that parents can use when they're not so well versed. They're not a master naturalist. They're just trying to get their kid out the house and get everybody to calm down.
Right.
Stop cabin fever. Just like focusing on the senses. You don't have to be a master naturalist. You can say, oh, okay, I hear wind. Okay, I hear water. You can just focus on that one sense.
Ask the kids to observe with all their senses. Absolutely. That's a really, really good point. I was going to, list a bunch of benefits that the children especially get from these experiences. It's the ability to observe, the calmness. I forgot to say, in terms of health benefits, it's calming for everyone. It really, for us as stressed out adults, it is so relaxing. Even if you don't think it's something that you like, try it. Go out into a natural setting and just sit and observe. And I really do think that most, if not all people, will feel a greater sense of calm come over them. And it works that way for kids too. Now, my attempts to get younger kids to sit and meditate in nature, not so productive, but that running around that they're free to do, and the exploring, or maybe even playing in a creek, it makes them manageable. So they may work in opposite ways, but it still has the healthy calming effect. So there's the calmness, definitely. The learning to observe, the kindness and gentleness towards other creatures around you, including your parents and your siblings, but it can start with an ant, it can start with a flower. I am having to teach kids to not pick every flower that they see, because that park is there for everyone. But they're learning to respect nature and to respect other people. Talking about the bugs that they're scared of, or the other animals like snakes. When it involves more of this survival focus, learning to, say, build a shelter out of sticks and leaves, which, by the way, you have to have permission to do. It can be on your own property or through a class. You don't want to impose on a public park without permission. But learning to do those sort of things encourages bravery. Sensory skills we talked about, you can encourage every single one. I mean, at some point you can even get taste into there, but you need to be an expert on that. And I'm not even, unless I know something that we find in a bush is totally harmless, I tell them not to use the sense of taste. But there are others who are more knowledgeable than myself and can make a whole class out of that. Like, it's safe to eat this, and this leaf is actually edible. So that's a really fascinating topic
Mama,
too, that you
Can I
can
tell
you can
a
learn.
leaf that's edible?
What's one leaf that's edible?
Beech leaves.
Beech
Yum.
leaves. Yes, we've learned that you can eat the leaves from beech trees.
And also the nuts.
But then the responsibility towards all living creatures. And, you know, I've totally left out basic life sciences too. I mean, there's so much science in nature, of course. Reflection on God's greatness and the names and the verses from the Quran that refer to aspects of nature. Spiritual development, just from that peace and love that you may feel when you're out in nature, it can grow into a greater love of our Creator as well. And then the role that we all play as Khalifa, how that's reflected in how we treat the earth and connect with the earth. So yeah, it's I mean, I'm sure there are many more benefits as well, but these are the ones that first came to my mind. And so I hope everybody can get outside as much as possible this winter. I think it'll make you feel better. It's definitely good for the kids. And inshallah, as soon as we can, we will have a spiritual nature hike, because I think, I don't know, Corey and I will be on another plane, and I would love it if we could share it with others too. I have to tell everyone that for the longest time, I was a bit reluctant to share my personal reflections about nature and my deen, because I thought it sounded a bit odd. I'd never heard any other Muslims speak that way. But yeah, now that we have these discussions, I'm finding out I'm not that unique, and it's so exciting. Even if it's something you haven't thought about before, to listen to it is always quite, you know, revealing and a positive experience. But then to be able to share those feelings with someone when you thought that you couldn't before is always quite a pleasure. So inshallah, we will have to have an in-person discussion as soon as possible.
Inshallah. Another thing that I found works well. Oh, wait a minute. We got a question real quick from Nada. Do you recommend any particular dhikr or other Islamic meditation practice to do outdoors?
Ooh, nice question. I can't say off the top of my head any particular dhikr. I mean, basic things like Subhanallah, Allahu Akbar come to mind when I'm seeing the beauty in nature. Oh, and of course you can pick certain names as well to repeat. But that was I really love that question, because Nuria, honey, can you please? Please, Nuria, stop it. Sorry, everybody. But to take your dhikr outdoors and observe what is happening around you. You can do it with your eyes closed and just feel the breeze, or you can have your eyes open and be reflecting on what you see around you as you put it together with remembrance of Allah. That's my absolute favorite experience on the face of this earth. So I highly recommend it. So thank you, Nada, for asking about that. But the names, I think what comes to mind for me are the names that you can see, that you're reminded of when you're out in nature.
Another thing that I would like people to normalize. So people are doing it now at some masjid where they're actually praying outside. So that I think praying outside, whether individually or as a group, should be normalized, should be a normal thing, because I you know how you try to develop a certain khushu' in your prayer, or certain awareness and mindfulness in your prayer. When you do that outside, it's like all your senses are on overload. So you're praying, and I sometimes I feel like I can feel the curvature of the earth, right? when I'm praying outdoors. It's such a special thing, to pray outdoors. So you can pray wherever you personally like to go. I prefer the woods. I'm not a beach person. I'm just not. But I love the sound of the water, and just, that wave, going back and forth while you're going back and forth, it's just a beautiful thing. And like the trees, like you are worshiping, and the trees are worshiping, and everything, every sound you hear is like its own form of worship. So praying, normalizing praying outdoors is like such a beautiful, beautiful thing to me. So yeah, mashallah.
That's an awesome recommendation. I mean, some people might think that it'll be very distracting, but what are those distractions? Those distractions are actually reminders as well. Now, I mean, I get that as you try to focus on your recitation, when you go inside, it'll be much easier to focus. So there's an improvement there. But even those things that we might call distractions are really reminders. So it's a very deep, very, very complete experience to be able to pray outside. And the same goes for dhikr or any sort of reflection, contemplation when done out in nature.
Yeah, I think it's a reminder. All these things that we're feeling with our senses in nature. It's a reminder of. But I also feel that it's a dhikr. So you know how you dhikr in a group. You're participating when you're outdoors, and you are intentionally mindful of Allah's creation. You are participating in a group dhikr. It's just the whole earth is the group dhikr. SubhanAllah.
It's absolutely true. And so now again, I'm imagining this hike, which will include salat and dhikr as well, inshallah, just so we can share that experience. Everything you hear is dhikr towards Allah. The plants and the animals don't get it wrong. So anything that you hear is going to be beneficial in developing that relationship with the Creator.
And so there's the flip side too. There's the flip side. When forests are decimated and we can no longer hear the dhikr of the birds or the frogs, we have contributed to the suppression of someone's dhikr, So you can think about, that way too. You can think about the beauty of participating in group dhikr, but you could also think about how, oppressing someone else's dhikr is happening when we damage our environment, when we throw trash away mindfully, when you see that plastic bag swinging in the breeze when you're out on a public park, So it's just think about it both ways.
I know we're almost out of time, Corey, but so many of the things you said were actually points that I wanted to bring up. Again, with the youth education, getting the kids outside, they start to recognize the right and the wrong. They see the beauty, but they notice the trash, they notice the damage. And subhanAllah, that just, when that happens with my students, that's when I'm just so grateful that for the whole experience. And I'm so much more hopeful for how they will care for the earth. Because if it looks normal to you, if the pollution, the damage looks normal, there will be no desire to change it. But if you see the original beauty and then see the difference between the two, then you develop that concern. And lastly, when you become close enough to nature, I sincerely believe you feel the difference as well. The feeling in your heart when you're in the natural surroundings versus when you're in a decimated area or even in a city. It's something you can feel in your heart, and that's when I take it as deeply spiritual.
Alhamdulillah. Thank you so much, Sevim. So yeah, we're gonna close this out. There's so many ideas that you brought forward, and I'm looking forward to our outdoor event. Inshallah soon. I want to thank everyone who joined us today for Khalifa Conversations. It's been awesome to learn more about the benefits of spending time in nature. One thing I love about Khalifa Conversations that it's allowed us to connect, sometimes even globally. And I hope that everyone is inspired to take action locally. I wanted to remind everyone to, follow Green Muslims and Green Ramadan on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. And Sevim, before we close out with Surah Asa, did you have anything else you want to share? Any closing words or anything like that?
If you have any interest in talking to me personally, you can reach out to me at my Green Muslims account, even though a lot of this, what I talked about, is not specifically Green Muslims work, but it's my first name, SEVIM @greenmuslims.org. Thank you, Corey.
So while I'm doing Surah Asa, you want to write that in the chat real quick? Okay. All right. Thank you all. Thank you all for joining us. والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. Amen. Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Thank you.
Wa alaikum assalam. Thank you, Corey. Thank you, everybody, for joining.
I want to talk.